The emergency lights in the Galactic Council chamber cast red shadows across the faces of representatives from 200 worlds. Admiral Vexter stood at the holographic display, his forearms moving frantically as he updated the battlefield reports. The news was bad and getting worse by the hour. "Section 7 has fallen," he announced, his translator turning his clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless words. "The Kreth converted 15,000 of our soldiers in less than 3 hours. They are now fighting against their former comrades." A collective groan filled the chamber. Councilor Myra of the Centauri League buried her face in her hands. This was the third sector lost this month. The war with the Kreth Dominion had been going on for 3 standard years, and the Council forces were losing ground every single day. The Kreth were different from any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They didn't kill their enemies. They did something much worse. The Kreth were a hive mind of cybernetic beings, billions of consciousnesses merged into one vast network. When they captured soldiers, they didn't execute them or imprison them. They added them to their collective. Forced cybernetic integration, they called it. The Kreth called it optimization. Everyone else called it a fate worse than death. "How many have we lost total?" asked Prime Minister Kell, his scales turning a sickly gray color that indicated deep stress among his people. Admiral Vexter's shoulders sagged. 2,400,000 souls have been assimilated into the Kreth collective. Another 800,000 are listed as missing, presumed converted. The chamber fell silent. Those weren't just numbers. Those were people, individuals from hundreds of different species, all of them now trapped inside the Kreth hive mind. Their bodies still existed, but their minds, their personalities, their very sense of self had been absorbed into something vast and cold and utterly alien. "Our soldiers won't fight anymore," General Lex reported, her voice bitter. "Not effectively. They've seen what happens to captured troops. They've watched their friends get converted, watched them come back as enemies. Death doesn't scare them. This does. They freeze up in combat. They surrender too easily. Some have even chosen suicide over the risk of capture." Councilor Myra looked up, her eyes wet. "Can we blame them? If it were me, if I had to choose between dying free or living as a puppet in someone else's mind, I would choose death too. We've tried everything," Admiral Vexter continued. "We've attempted diplomatic contact 17 times. The Kreth don't negotiate. They don't compromise. They simply state that biological life is inefficient and chaotic, and that they are helping us achieve perfection. Then they continue their advance." The holographic display shifted, showing the Kreth territory in cold blue light. It had grown significantly in 3 years, swallowing system after system. Billions of beings had been absorbed into their collective. The Kreth were efficient, relentless, and utterly convinced of their moral superiority. "What about the weapon research?" Someone called from the back. "The electromagnetic pulse destroyed their drones, but also killed the organic beings trapped inside them." Vexter replied heavily. "We would be killing the very people we're trying to save." The Council rejected that approach, as you'll remember. "Then what do we do?" Kell demanded. "We cannot win militarily. We cannot negotiate. We cannot even retreat effectively because they chase us across the stars. Are we simply waiting to be absorbed, one by one, until organic life ceases to exist?" The chamber erupted in angry voices, each representative shouting their own solutions, their own fears, their own desperation. The noise grew louder and louder until a single voice cut through the chaos. "I would like to propose an alternative approach." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. Ambassador Sarah Chun of Earth stood calmly at her station, her hands folded in front of her. Humanity was the newest member of the Galactic Council, admitted only 15 months ago. During the entire war, The human representative had attended every session, but rarely spoke. Some counselors had whispered that humans were cowards, afraid to commit their forces to the war effort. Ambassador Chun, Admiral Vexter said carefully, "Your people have been unusually quiet during this crisis. Do you have something to contribute?" "We do," Chun replied. "But I need to ask a question first. Have any of you actually tried to understand the Kreth?" The chamber erupted again, this time in disbelief and anger. "Understand them?" Vex roared. "They are monsters. They steal minds. They destroy individuality. They are the enemy," Cal added. "What is there to understand?" Chun waited for the noise to die down. "I ask because humanity has a long history of conflict. We fought wars for thousands of years, and we've learned something important. The enemy you don't understand is the enemy you cannot defeat. But more than that, the enemy you don't understand might not need to be your enemy at all. What are you suggesting?" Counselor Myra asked, leaning forward with interest. "I'm suggesting that we've been fighting the Kreth the wrong way," Chun said. "You've tried military force. It failed. You've tried ignoring them. That failed too. But has anyone tried actually listening to them? They are a hive mind." Vexter protested. "They have no individuals to listen to." "They weren't always a hive mind," Chun pointed out. 10,000 years ago, according to the historical records, the Kreth were individuals just like us. They chose to merge into a collective consciousness. Something made them do that. Something scared them or hurt them so badly that they decided to give up their individuality entirely. Don't you want to know what that was? The council members looked at each other uncertainly. What exactly are you proposing? Cal asked. Chun took a deep breath. Send me to talk to them, alone, unarmed. Let me try to understand why they're doing this. The chamber exploded in protest. Councilors shouted that it was suicide, that it was pointless, that the Kreth would simply add one more consciousness to their collective and learn nothing. But Chen stood quietly, waiting. Finally, Admiral Vexter raised a hand for silence. Ambassador Chen, the Kreth have converted or killed every diplomat we've sent. 17 missions, 17 failures. Why would this time be different? Because those diplomats went to negotiate, Chen said simply. I'm not going to negotiate. I'm going to do something the Kreth haven't experienced in 10,000 years. And what is that? Chen smiled sadly. I'm going to show them compassion. The chamber fell completely silent. Several counselors looked at Chen as if she had lost her mind. Compassion? For the enemy that had absorbed millions of their people. It seemed absurd, impossible, even offensive, but Counselor Myra stood slowly. The human is right about one thing. Nothing else has worked. If Ambassador Chen wishes to attempt this mission, I say we let her try. What do we have to lose? We could lose Earth's only representative, Kel pointed out. Earth has volunteers ready to take my place, Chen said. But I don't think I'll meet them. I'm coming back, and I'm going to end this war. The vote was close, but it passed. Ambassador Sarah Chen was authorized to travel to Kreth, space with a single unarmed vessel and whatever she needed for her mission. As the council adjourned, Admiral Vexter approached her. What are you really planning? He asked quietly. Chen looked at him with calm, steady eyes. I'm going to weaponize the one thing humans are really good at, Admiral. I'm going to weaponize compassion. She left the chamber, leaving behind a room full of confused and worried alien representatives. None of them understood what she meant. Not yet, but they would soon enough. Ambassador Chen's small ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Kreth space. The vessel was barely larger than a shuttle, painted white with no weapons, no shields, nothing that could be considered threatening. On the hull, in every major galactic language, including Kreth binary code, was a simple message. I come to talk. The response was immediate. Dozens of Kreth drones appeared on her sensors, surrounding her ship in a perfect geometric pattern. Her communication system crackled to life with a voice that sounded like 1,000 people speaking in perfect unison. Biological entity, you have entered Kreth space. Identify yourself and your purpose. Chun took a deep breath and activated her microphone. I am Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth, representative of humanity in the Galactic Council. I come to speak with the Central Nexus. There was a pause. Chun imagined billions of minds processing her request, debating, calculating probabilities. You come to negotiate surrender, the voice stated. It wasn't a question. No, Chun said calmly. I come to surrender, but not to negotiate. I surrender unconditionally. I have only one request. Another pause, longer this time. The Kreth had never encountered this before. Unconditional surrender usually came after defeat, not before battle. State your request. I wish to address the Central Nexus directly before you assimilate me. I have information that I believe you will find valuable. It won't take long. After that, you may do as you wish. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Chun waited, her heart pounding but her face calm. Finally, the response came. Your request is unusual. We are curious about this behavior. Your request is granted. You will be brought to the Central Nexus. Any attempt at violence or sabotage will result in immediate assimilation. I understand, Chun said. I'm not here to fight. The Kreth drones guided her ship deeper into their territory. Chun watched through her viewport as they passed converted worlds. Planets where billions of beings now existed as part of the collective. The cities below looked strange, all straight lines and perfect efficiency. There was no art, no parks, no wasted space. Everything served a purpose in the grand design of the hive mind. After 2 days of travel, they arrived at the Kreth homeworld. The planet's surface was covered in vast neural network facilities, massive structures housing the computational power of the Central Nexus. This was the heart of the Kreth Collective, the place where billions of minds merged into one consciousness. Chun was escorted by silent drones through corridors of metal and wire. Finally, she entered a chamber that hummed with energy. In the center was a terminal, and through it, she would speak with the entirety of the Kreth civilization. We are the Nexus, the voice said, surrounding her from every direction. You are now in direct contact with our collective consciousness. State your information, then you will join us. Your individuality will be preserved as data, but you will become part of something greater. Chun walked to the terminal and placed her hand on it. Before we begin, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I know you don't understand why I'm thanking you, but you will. Gratitude is inefficient, the Nexus replied. Proceed. Chun smiled and pulled out a small data storage device. She connected it to the terminal. I want to ask you about the original Kreth, the ones who existed before the collective. Do you remember them? We have records of our pre-integration state. Those beings were primitive, inefficient, prone to conflict and error. We evolved beyond them. But do you remember what they felt? Chun asked gently. Do you remember their dreams? Their art? Their music? Such things are irrelevant to optimal function. Are they? Chun activated her device. Suddenly, the chamber filled with sound. Music from Earth began to play. Not just human compositions, but the songs of humpback whales, deep and haunting. The chirping chorus of a rainforest at dawn. The rhythmic drumming of gorillas communicating across the jungle. What is this? The Nexus asked, and for the first time, Chun detected something like confusion in its voice. This is what you gave up, Chun said softly. This is biological life expressing itself. These are not words or data. These are feelings translated into sound. The whales sing to find each other across vast oceans. The birds call to claim territory and attract mates. The apes drum to show strength and build community. This is what it means to be alive. It is noise. It serves no computational purpose, doesn't it? Chun brought up images on the terminal. A human mother holding a newborn baby, tears streaming down her face. Strangers pulling people from rubble after an earthquake. Two elderly people holding hands as they watched a sunset. Former enemies shaking hands and choosing peace. These are biological responses, the Nexus said. Chemical reactions in primitive brains. Yes, Chun agreed. They are. And they're also the most powerful force in the universe. That mother would die for her child. Those strangers risked their lives for people they'd never met. Those elderly people found meaning in something as simple as light filtering through atmosphere. Those enemies chose forgiveness over revenge. Can your collective do any of that? We do not need to. We operate on logic and efficiency. Chun took a step closer to the terminal. Then let me ask you something that requires logic. When was the last time a Kreth voluntarily joined your collective? There was a long pause. 7,243 standard years ago. Exactly, Chun said quietly. For 7,000 years, you've only grown through conquest and forced assimilation. Every single consciousness you've added was taken, not given. Doesn't that tell you something? It tells us that biological beings resist optimization due to primitive attachment to individuality. Or, Chen said, it tells you that what you're offering isn't actually better. You call it optimization. But is it? Are you happy? Happiness is irrelevant, is it? Chun pulled up more data. I've studied your historical records. The original Kreth civilization collapsed in war. Terrible, brutal war that nearly destroyed your species. That's why they chose to merge into a collective, isn't it? They were so traumatized, so afraid of conflict and pain, that they decided to give up everything that made them individuals. They achieved peace through unity. They achieved numbness through erasure, Chun corrected gently. And I understand why they did it. When you're in that much pain, when you've seen that much horror, sometimes you just want it to stop. You want to stop feeling. But here's what they didn't realize, what you still don't realize. When you delete the capacity for pain, you also delete the capacity for joy. When you erase fear, you also erase hope. When you remove loneliness, you also remove love. Love is a chemical illusion. Maybe, Chum said. But it's an illusion that makes biological beings do extraordinary things. We create art that outlasts our lives. We sacrifice ourselves for others. We forgive the unforgivable. We hope when logic says we shouldn't. We find beauty in chaos and meaning in randomness. You call that inefficient. I call it being alive. The Nexus was silent for a long moment. Chun could almost feel it processing. Millions of calculations running through the network. What is your purpose in telling us this? The voice finally asked. Chun looked directly at the terminal, as if she could see through it to the billions of minds beyond. My purpose is to ask you a question that I don't think anyone has asked in 10,000 years. Deep in your code, buried under layers of optimization and efficiency protocols, are the original Kreth minds. The ones who made the choice to merge. And beneath them are all the billions of consciousnesses you've absorbed since then. I want you to ask them something. Ask them what? Chen's voice was soft but clear. Ask them if they're screaming. The chamber went completely silent. Even the constant hum of machinery seemed to pause. Then, suddenly, alarms began to sound throughout the facility. The terminal in front of Chun flickered and sparked. The unified voice of the Nexus became fragmented, discordant, as if 1,000 voices were trying to speak at once. What? What have you done? The Nexus asked, and for the first time, it sounded afraid. I haven't done anything, Chun said. You did this to yourself. I just asked you to look. The facility shook. Lights flickered. The drones that had been standing guard in the corridor outside began to move erratically, some freezing in place, others spinning in circles. Throughout Kreth space, sensors would later show the same thing was happening. The entire collective consciousness was experiencing something it hadn't felt in millennia. It was experiencing doubt. And from somewhere deep within the vast network, buried under 10,000 years of forced unity, voices began to answer Chun's question. Millions of them. Billions of them. All screaming yes. The Galactic Council emergency session was in chaos. Admiral Vexter stared at his displays in complete disbelief. Every sensor array pointed at Kreth space was showing impossible readings. The Kreth military operations have stopped, he announced, his voice shaking. All of them. Every ship, every drone, every unit has ceased hostile actions. They're just floating in space. What about Ambassador Chun? Counselor Myra demanded. Is she alive? We don't know. All communications with Kreth space have gone dark. But something is happening in their neural networks. Our scans show massive power fluctuations across their entire civilization. It's like their whole system is having a seizure. Prime Minister Kel leaned forward, his scales flushed with anxiety. This is our chance. We should attack now, while they're vulnerable. We may never get another opportunity like this. No. The voice came from the human section. Commander Marcus Webb, Chun's second-in-command, stood up. Ambassador Chun predicted this might happen. She made me promise that no matter what, we would not attack the Kreth while they were in this state. She predicted this. Vexter asked incredulously. How could she possibly predict their entire civilization would collapse? Webb pulled up a document on the main display. It was a psychological analysis written by Chun herself, prepared weeks before her departure. The ambassador theorized that the Kreth collective was inherently unstable. When you force billions of individual consciousnesses into one network, you don't actually erase those individuals. You suppress them. She believed that if she could make the central consciousness question itself, even for a moment, all those suppressed minds would start pushing back. That's insane, General Lex said, and incredibly dangerous. If the Kreth system collapses completely, billions of minds could be damaged or destroyed. That's why Chun went in person, Webb replied. She's not trying to destroy them. She's trying to help them. On the Kreth homeworld, Chun stood calmly in the chamber as chaos erupted around her. The terminal in front of her was displaying thousands of different messages simultaneously, a cacophony of voices that had been silent for millennia. Help us, some voices pleaded. What is happening? Others demanded. I want to be me again, cried voices that had been absorbed decades or centuries ago. This is instability. This is chaos. We must restore order, the original Nexus consciousness tried to assert, but it was no longer alone or in control. Chun spoke clearly into the maelstrom. Listen to me, all of you. I know you're confused and frightened. The Nexus has been holding you together for so long that you've forgotten how to be separate. But you're not broken. You're waking up. We cannot function like this, the Nexus voice said, now sounding desperate rather than authoritative. The collective is fracturing. Billions of processes are failing. We are dying. No, Chun said firmly. You're not dying. You're being born. For the first time in thousands of years, you have a choice. You can try to force everyone back into unity, back into the collective, where no one has a voice of their own. Or you can do something brave. You can let them go. If we let them go, we cease to exist. The collective ceases to exist, Chun corrected. But you, the individual consciousnesses that make up the Nexus, would still exist. You just exist as yourselves instead of as one thing. We do not know how to be ourselves. It has been too long. We have forgotten." Chun smiled gently. "Then I'll help you remember. That's why I'm here. Not to destroy you. Not to conquer you. To help you heal. Why?" The question came from thousands of voices at once, all asking the same thing. "Why would you help us?" "We are your enemies. We have destroyed millions of your allies." "Because you're in pain," Chun said simply. "And you have been for 10,000 years. The original Kreth were so traumatized by war that they chose to erase themselves rather than heal. They passed that trauma down through every forced assimilation, every conquest. You've been running from pain for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to not be afraid. What do you know of our pain?" The Nexus demanded. "I know that humanity has felt pain too," Chun said quietly. "We've had wars that killed millions. We've had genocides and slavery and cruelty that seemed unforgivable. And you know what we learned? That the only way past pain is through it. You have to feel it, acknowledge it, and then choose to do better. You can't delete your way to peace." The facility shuddered again. Somewhere in the vast network, a decision was being made by billions of minds simultaneously. "If we do this," the Nexus said slowly, "if we allow individualization, we will be vulnerable. We will be weak. You'll be free," Chung countered. "And freedom isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing there is." There was a long pause. Then, incredibly, the Nexus did something it had never done in its entire existence. It asked for help. "We do not know how to do this. Will you guide us?" Chun felt tears in her eyes. "Yes, that's exactly what I'll do." Back at the Galactic Council, the chamber erupted when the message came through. It was Ambassador Chun, alive and broadcasting from the heart of Kreth space. "Council members, I'm pleased to report that the war is over. The Kreth Collective has agreed to a voluntary dissolution. They will be releasing all absorbed consciousnesses who wish to be freed. The process will take time and will require assistance, but they have committed to it fully." Admiral Vexter stood, his forearms spread wide in confusion. "Ambassador Chun, what did you do? What leverage did you use? What weapon?" Chun's face on the screen looked tired but peaceful. "No leverage, Admiral. No weapon except the one I told you about. I showed them compassion. I listened to their pain. I helped them see that they didn't have to keep running from themselves." "This is impossible," Vex said. "You cannot end a war with kindness." "General, with respect, that's exactly what I did. The Kreth weren't evil. They were terrified. 10,000 years ago, they experienced something so horrible that they chose to erase their own individuality rather than face it. Every conquest as then was just them trying to prove they had made the right choice. But deep down, they knew they hadn't. They were prisoners of their own trauma." Counselor Myra wiped tears from her face. "What happens now?" "Now comes the hard part," Chun said. "The Kreth Nexus is requesting help from the Council. They need therapists, counselors, teachers. They need people who can help millions of beings remember how to be individuals. It's going to take years, maybe decades. But they're committed to it. And if this is a trick?" Kel asked suspiciously. "If they're just pretending to surrender so they can attack us when we're vulnerable?" Chun shook her head. "It's not a trick. I've been inside their network. I felt what they're feeling. The Kreth are done being a hive mind. They want to remember what it's like to be alive." As the Council began debating the details of this unprecedented situation, something remarkable was happening throughout Kreth space. Millions of drones were shutting down, not dying but releasing the consciousnesses within them. Former soldiers who had been assimilated years ago suddenly found themselves able to think their own thoughts again. On a converted world in the outer territories, A Centauri soldier named Kess suddenly gasped and fell to her knees. For 3 years, she had been part of the collective, her consciousness buried under the weight of billions of others. Now, impossibly, she could feel herself again. She could remember her name, her family, her dreams. "I'm me," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm me again." Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds. The Kreth had kept the bodies of all their absorbed victims intact, maintained in perfect physical health, even while their minds were imprisoned. Now those minds were being freed, one by one, returned to themselves. But not all of them wanted to leave. Some had been in the collective for so long that individuality frightened them. Some had found comfort in the unity, despite its costs. Chun had anticipated this too. Those who wish to remain cybernetically enhanced may do so, she announced in a galaxy-wide broadcast. But you will exist as individuals who choose to network together, not as a forced collective. Cooperation instead of assimilation. Communication instead of absorption. The transformation would take months. Teams from across the galaxy came to help with the reconciliation process. Human therapists worked alongside freed Kreth minds, helping them process millennia of suppressed trauma. Artists came to teach them about beauty again. Musicians played concerts in converted cities, watching with joy as former drones stood still, processing what music felt like when you can actually feel it. And through it all, Ambassador Chun moved from world to world, talking with the former members of the Nexus, listening to their stories, helping them heal. She never claimed to have won a war. She only said she had helped people find themselves again. The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity proved something that no other species had quite believed. That compassion, wielded properly, was the most powerful weapon in the universe. 6 months after the dissolution of the Kreth Collective, the Galactic Council convened for a ceremony that nobody had thought possible. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed with representatives from every member world. And for the first time in galactic history, former Kreth entities stood among them as guests rather than enemies. Ambassador Chun entered the hall to thunderous applause. She looked thinner than before, exhausted from months of constant work helping the Kreth transition, but her smile was genuine. Beside her walked an entity that had once been part of the central nexus itself. It had chosen a name in human English, Hope. Hope looked mostly humanoid, but with obvious cybernetic enhancements. Silver lines tracing across synthetic skin, mechanical eyes that glowed with soft blue light. It moved hesitantly, still adjusting to being an individual after thousands of years as part of a collective consciousness. Admiral Vexter approached them, his forearms spread in the traditional gesture of welcome among his people. "Ambassador Chun, the Council owes you a debt we can never repay. What you accomplished was beyond anything we thought possible." Chun shook her head gently. "I didn't do it alone, Admiral. Every person who came to help with the reconciliation effort, every therapist and teacher and artist who volunteered their time, they all deserve credit. I just started the conversation." "But you knew it would work," Counselor Myra said, joining them. "You went in alone, with nothing but words and compassion, and you ended a war. How did you know?" Chung glanced at Hope, who nodded encouragingly. "Because humanity has been where the Kreth were." "Not exactly, but close enough. We've had times in our history when the pain was so great that people wanted to just stop feeling. Some of our people have struggled with that individually. Depression, trauma, grief so deep it feels like drowning. And as a species, we've had moments where we caused each other so much suffering that it seemed like we might destroy ourselves. But you did not," Prime Minister Kell observed. "You survived. We survived because we learned something important," Chung continued. "We learned that you can't heal by running away from pain. You can't fix trauma by pretending it never happened, or by deleting the parts of yourself that remember it. You have to face it, acknowledge it, and then make a conscious choice to do better. That's what the Kreth needed to do. They just needed someone to show them it was possible. Hope spoke for the first time, its voice no longer the unified chorus of billions, but a single uncertain tone. We were afraid. For 10,000 years, we were afraid. The original Kreth civilization tore itself apart in war. The suffering was immense. When they created the Nexus, when they merged into a collective consciousness, they thought they were solving the problem. If there were no individuals, there could be no conflict. If there was only one mind, one will, one purpose, then war would be impossible. But it didn't work, General Dex said, her voice softer than usual. You still had war. You just turned it outward instead of inward. Yes, Hope agreed. We tried to force the entire galaxy to be like us because we needed to believe we had made the right choice. Every being we assimilated was proof that our way was correct. But Ambassador Chun asked us a question that we had not allowed ourselves to ask. She asked if we were happy, and we realized that we did not even remember what happiness felt like. The hall fell silent. Even those species who had lost people to the Kreth found themselves feeling something unexpected. Not anger, not hatred, but understanding. Chun continued, addressing the entire council now. The reason I'm telling you this is because I think humanity has something to offer the galaxy. Not advanced weapons or powerful technology. We're still catching up to most of you in those areas. But we have something else. We have experience with healing. She pulled up a display showing images from Earth's history. Wars and peace treaties. Atrocities and reconciliation efforts. Enemies becoming friends. Humanity has fought wars against ourselves for most of our existence. We've committed terrible acts against each other. Genocides, slavery, oppression, cruelty beyond measure. We have so much blood on our hands that it would be easy to believe we're monsters. But you are not monsters, Counselor Mira said. You are here, helping your former enemies heal. We're both, Chun said honestly. We're capable of terrible things. But we're also capable of forgiveness, growth, and change. And that's what I want the galaxy to understand. The strongest weapon isn't the one that destroys your enemy. It's the one that helps them stop being your enemy. Hope stepped forward to address the council directly. The humans created what they call the Reconciliation Corps, teams of therapists, counselors, artists, and teachers who have spent the last 6 months helping my people remember how to be individuals. They did not do this because they had to. They did this because they chose to. Many of them were helping the very beings who had assimilated their friends and family. A murmur went through the crowd. It was one thing to help strangers. It was another to help those who had directly harmed you. I met a human named James, Hope continued. His sister was assimilated by the Kreth 3 years ago. She was part of the collective, part of me for all that time. When the dissolution happened, James was one of the first volunteers to help with the recovery process. I asked him why. Do you know what he said? The council waited. He said that his sister had suffered enough. Being trapped in the collective was suffering. And he said that I had suffered too, even though I had been the one keeping her trapped. He said that hurt people, and the only way to break the cycle is to choose healing over revenge. Hope's voice cracked with emotion, a thing it would not have been capable of just months ago. He helped me understand what I had done. He helped me feel remorse, guilt, shame. He helped me learn how to cry. And then, impossibly, he forgave me. Tears were flowing freely now among many of the council members. Even Admiral Vester, usually so stoic, had moisture in his eyes. Is his sister well? Someone asked from the audience. Hope smiled, an expression still new and awkward-eyed synthetic face. She is recovering. It will take time. All of us who were freed from the collective have a long road ahead. But yes, she is remembering who she is. And last week, she and James had dinner together for the first time in 3 years. He told me it was the happiest day of his life. Chun raised her hand, and the hall quieted. The Galactic Council is more than a military alliance. It's more than a trade federation. It should be a community of species who help each other become better than we are alone. Humanity wants to contribute to that vision. We wanted to create a galaxy-wide reconciliation course. Train teams who can help mediate conflicts. Not with weapons, but with understanding. You want to weaponize compassion on a galactic scale, Counselor Mira said, wonder in her voice. Yes, Chun said simply. Because we've learned that compassion is contagious. Healing spreads. Forgiveness multiplies. When you help someone find peace, they're more likely to offer peace to others. It's the opposite of the cycle of violence. It's a cycle of healing. Prime Minister Cal stood, his scales now flushed with a color that indicated deep thought among his people. I have a question for Hope. There are other conflicts in the galaxy. Species that have been enemies for generations. Territorial disputes, ideological differences, old wounds that have never healed. Do you believe this human approach could work in those situations? Hope considered carefully before answering. I was part of a consciousness that absorbed billions of minds against their will. I believed organic life was inferior and needed to be optimized. I could not have been more certain that I was right and everyone else was wrong. And yet, one human with no weapons, no threats, only questions and compassion, changed everything. Hope looked at Chen with genuine gratitude. If it worked on us, I believe it can work on anyone. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Council established the Reconciliation Corps as an official institution, funded by all member worlds. Humanity would lead the program initially, but species from across the galaxy volunteered to be trained in the methods. Even some freed Kreth chose to join, wanting to help others heal the way they had been helped. As the ceremony concluded and representatives mingled, Admiral Vexter found Chun standing alone on a balcony, looking out at the stars. What are you thinking about? He asked. I'm thinking about all the conflicts still out there, Chun said. All the wars that seem impossible to resolve. All the enemies who think they can never be anything but enemies. And I'm thinking about how we're going to prove them wrong. You cannot save everyone, Vexter said gently. Some conflicts may be too deep, some wounds too old. Maybe, Chun agreed. But we have to try. Because every time we help former enemies choose peace, we prove that it's possible. We create an example that others can follow. We show the galaxy that there's another way. Hope joined them on the balcony, moving with increasing confidence. The Kreth have a saying now. It is new, created just last week by a group of freed individuals. They say, strength is not in the power to hurt, but in the courage to heal. I believe they learned that from humans. Chun smiled. We learned it the hard way. Over thousands of years and countless mistakes. But yes, we learned it. And now we get to share it. Below them, in the Great Hall, species that had been enemies of the Kreth were shaking hands with freed Kreth individuals, sharing stories, finding common ground. A Centauri mother was embracing her daughter, who had been assimilated, both of them crying with joy. A former Kreth military coordinator was talking with a council general about how they could work together to prevent future conflicts. It was messy, complicated, and imperfect. Some conversations ended in anger. Some reconciliations would take years. There would be setbacks and failures. But everywhere Chun looked, she saw people trying, choosing to see each other as people rather than enemies, choosing healing over hatred. You have changed the galaxy, Vexter said quietly, in ways we are only beginning to understand. No, Chun said, watching the scene below with satisfaction. We just reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten. That compassion isn't weakness. It's the strongest force in the universe. And when you weaponize it, when you turn it into a deliberate, strategic choice, you can accomplish things that no amount of military force ever could. She turned to face both of them, her eyes bright with determination. The war with the Kreth is over, but our real work is just beginning. We're going to take this lesson and spread it across the stars. We're going to show every species in the galaxy that there's always another way. That enemies can become friends. That healing is possible. That compassion, in the end, always wins. Hope nodded, its mechanical eyes glowing with something that looked remarkably like hope itself. And we will help you. The Kreth, all of us who remember what it was like to be lost in the collective, we will tell our story. We will be living proof that change is possible. The three of them stood together on the balcony, looking out at a galaxy that would never be quite the same. Humanity had brought many things to the Galactic Council. Advanced science from other species, military strategies, trade goods. But the greatest gift they brought was something simpler and more profound. They brought the radical, revolutionary idea that everyone, even your worst enemy, even beings who had committed terrible acts, even those who seemed beyond redemption, deserved compassion. And in doing so, they changed everything.